Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nidbareh. Chaim, everybody, Chaim. Today is a Yom Tov. It's a very special day, Chaim. Yud Shvat, 10th day of the month of Shvat, the day that the sun set and the sun rose. Sun set with the passing of the previous Rebbe in 1950, around 7:45. It was on Shabbos morning. And as a result, a sun rose with the 7th generation of leaders of Chabad, the 7th being are endeared, and our Rebbe became Rebbe in 1950, 51 officially, but became the Rebbe for all of us that choose him. And even if we don't, as we perhaps will get to. So, what does it mean a Rebbe? What does it mean the Rebbe from the 6th generation to the 7th generation? What is one of the main, the purpose that the Rebbe wants to accomplish with me, with you, with all of us? Let's start. Start with a story from the previous Rebbe when he was still a young man. His father, the Rebbe Rashab, was the Rebbe. This is before the fall of the Tsar of Russia. So probably in the 1910s or something like that, this story takes place. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was probably maybe 30 years old, something like that. And his father told him that there's a decree against the Jewish people from the Tsar of Russia, the interior minister by the name of Stalinin, not Joseph Stalin, but another Stalinin. Terrible decree that will affect Jewish education, will affect Jewish life, and it must be stopped. This decree. So his son asked him, how far do I go to stop this? And he said, until Mesiras Nefesh, ready to give up your life. Ready to give up your life. And so he went on a journey to the capital, which the capital then was Petersburg, a place where Jews were not allowed to go unless they were doing some kind of business or whatever, but they weren't allowed to go there. He didn't know exactly what to do, how to go about what was necessary. He just knew that there was a decree that's going to affect Jewish education, Jewish life, in such a degree that it needs to be stopped. And he's not given, a whole load of, lowdown from, the Secret Service, as it were, to know what to do. But he knew he had to do it. So he gets on the train, he goes to Petersburg, and he somehow finds the professor that was once a professor that was the professor for Stalin. And he went to meet him and told him his plight. They spoke. This professor wasn't a Jewish professor, but was very much taken by him. Finally, he told him, I've got to do something to stop a decree that's going to affect the Jewish community in Russia in a very serious manner, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. So he says, I used to be his professor, his teacher, but he is such a vile individual, I have nothing to do with him anymore. Except I can tell you this. I have a pass to the ministry, the interior ministry that he heads, And with this pass, you'll be able to get in. However, if it's revealed how you got this pass, that it's from me, I don't need to tell you what kind of trouble you'll be in and what kind of trouble I'll be in. It's just no problem. I'll take care of it. I know no one will get into trouble. He comes to the ministry. He shows the sentry that's outside, the guard, his pass, and he sees it's a perfect legal pass for him to go into the ministry. But he looks at him and he sees that he's a Jew, an observant Jew, which to him was a contradiction, not possible. But he has the pass, so he gives him a pass. He goes into the building. He's searching out where is the office to the minister, and finds out what the floor it's on. He goes to that floor, and he sees, as he's walking down the floor, that the minister himself is leaving his office. He recognizes who it is. It's Stalin. They cross each other. He leaves. He waits till he's out of sight. And the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, enters his office, rummages through the files on his desk. There are two files. There are files, that were incomplete, and there were two piles that the files went into. Accepted, rejected. He goes through and he sees the decree that is against the Jewish community, and he takes the rubber stamp and he stamps it, reject it, and puts it in the middle of the file and walks out. And he goes back. Success. What does this story tell us? In those days, and afterwards, during after the Russian Revolution and communism, how Judaism had to go underground, and the self-sacrifice that the previous Rebbe had before and after was, absolute self-sacrifice for the Jewish people, to such a degree that when communism came in, the previous Rebbe made a pact with 9 other Chassidim that they will make sure that Judaism will stay alive in Russia and do whatever it takes. As his father told him, until Mesiras Nefesh, till self-sacrifice, ready to give up your life. Likewise, with the 9, they were yeshiva students, they weren't married yet, that they would do whatever it takes to make sure that there's underground chadarim, schools for the children, mikvahs, places to pray and to learn throughout Russia. And they divided up the territory in order that there should be the embers of Jewish life. An ember is not a full fire, but there's a flame there, or there's a light there, and there's heat there, and there's a little bit of a fire left to make sure that it never goes out. This is the previous Rebbe and what sacrifice, ready to give up your life. That was in Russia. When he came to America, he had the same Mesiras Nefesh, the same self-sacrifice. Although here, it was different in America. In Russia, it was ready to give up your life. And as the old saying goes, if you have nothing to live for, nothing to die for rather, then you have nothing to live for. So you have to live for your Judaism. And if you need to die, not that you're looking to die, of course. And not that they did that in any manner, that whatever they escaped, to make sure that they would live. But actually some of the 9 that made a pact with the previous Rebbe did not make it. Did not make it out physically alive. In any case, coming to America, things were different. Free society, open society. Yes, there was anti-Semitism in the 40s, as there's anti-Semitism at any time, at all times. But now, Mesirus Nefesh, self-sacrifice, ready to, in this instance, not to give up your life, but to give up of your life for another. And this is what the previous Rebbe did. Coming to America, Chabad was a very small group. Yet, the previous Rebbe, as in Russia, felt responsible for all of Russian Jewry, and therefore took the 9 students and made a pact with them to make sure that Jewish life would be maintained throughout Russia. So likewise in America, he did the same thing. And he took young yeshiva students, the same thing as in Russia, but here, to go to communities and start up a Jewish day school, start up a places of learning, yeshivas, in order that Jewish children will have a place to continue Jewish life. And he did it the same way with Mesirus Nefesh, asking young students who weren't even married yet to go out to communities and to knock on doors, literally, to inspire children to go into the new yeshiva, the new day school that they had made in the community, literally the ground up. So, interesting story that I just heard last night from a grandson of Rabbi Avram Hecht, the Hecht family, the famous Hecht family. And Rabbi Avram Hecht, this is in the 40s, previous Rebbe came in 1940. He enlisted him to go to Worcester, Massachusetts, and to start up a Jewish school there. So he comes there, and in a way, the same way as it was in Russia, you're not given anything but just the command. You're not given the resources. You got to figure it out yourself and make it happen. That's what, I mean, maybe some things were given, but by and large, not. And you got to make it happen. You got to make it work. Got to make it work. So he comes to Worcester, and he goes into the local synagogue, the Orthodox synagogue that was there at the time, or maybe there was more than one, but he went into one. He spoke there and inspired the people, gifted orator, and said, we're starting a school. I need your help. So people got on board, and he starts knocking door to door to, homes, I guess, with a mezuzah. L'chaim. With a mezuzah. Or whatever. He knew got a list maybe from people in the synagogue. Whatever he did, he's knocking door to door, literally to speak to parents about sending their children to a Jewish school that he's putting together. He comes to one door, knocks, a woman answers the door, looks at him and says, sorry, no collectors today, and slams the door in his face. Oh, that just took out the wind out of him. That made him, was such a downer for him. He looks like a Hasidic Jew, but of course she understood that he's coming just to take some money from maybe an institution, which is worthy a worthy knock on the door. But he wasn't coming for that. He was coming to help the Jewish children. I'm here for you. And she didn't even give time of day it just took the steam out of him, blew the wind, took the wind out of him, that he went back to New York and went into the previous Rebbe and said, Rebbe, this is not for me. I told him what happened. I'm not made for this. Says the previous Rebbe to him. It's Baishes bim shaloi bim kaimai v'gasis ruach. To be embarrassed in the wrong place is coming from arrogance. Ooh, wow. You feel embarrassed? It's not the right place to be embarrassed. There are times to be embarrassed. If you did something wrong, if someone is lauding you in a way and you feel, like instead of feeling very good about yourself, you feel embarrassed that you've been lauded, that would be appropriate. But here, because someone closed the door on you, that comes from a sense of haughtiness. In other words, why is that a haughtiness? It's because you feel you're undeserved of such treatment. You're more deserved. That itself is a haughtiness. Now, just to understand that, doesn't mean that the woman should have done that, inappropriate. But when you are driven by a cause, when you are driven that you need to accomplish something. So take in business, if you're driven and someone is going to, say no to your sales bid, what do? You go on to the next person. Or you try harder with that person. But you don't. You say, oh, I'm closing up shop. You don't do that. Why? It's because you care. It's important to you. Because you care to make the sale. It's important to you because it's important to you. You're going to either try harder with that person or you're going to get the next person to make the sale. It's the same thing as here. If it's important to you, right? If you're doing it for someone else and it's important for them, not so important for you, so then you may not accomplish. But if it's important to you, even though you're sent by somebody else, but it's important for you that every child should have a Jewish education, and that someone mistakes you for a money collector, for a schnorrer, and that's not going to get you down. Because what's important is not you, but the cause, the urgent matter at hand. That's all that matters. And that was the story of the previous Rebbe when he was in Russia, with the story with Stalin, where the decree against the Jewish community was severe and needed to be stopped. All that mattered was the inyan. The inyan means the matter, the issue at hand, right? Not the individual, but the issue at hand. Put aside ourselves. That's called Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. In the original story of the previous Rebbe, it was until you're ready to give up your life if necessary. In the story with Rabbi Avram Hecht, it was about Mesiras Nefesh, putting aside your agenda, putting aside your feelings, and being driven only by what the previous Rebbe in that instance sent you on a mission to fulfill it, and feeling that that mission is your personal mission. Not a favor that's being done, you're doing for the Rebbe, but the favor is being done to you that you could fulfill his mission. And with this, the previous Rebbe said, the difference between the Russian Hasidim and the American Hasidim, this is in the 40s, is they're both a fire, but the Americans are like straw when you put it on fire. It crackles, makes a lot of noise, straw, when you put it on fire, but it quickly goes out. The American boys, right? Again, this is the 40s. They have a pizzazz. They could speak. They have they have character. They put on a lot of noise, make a lot of noise, but the fire, the passion, quickly dissipates. As opposed to the Russians, they're like embers. An ember doesn't make a noise. Coal, when you make when you're making a barbecue and you have embers of the coals, it's not a real flamey fire. It's a coal that will be consistently a flame. It's not going to go out easily. It doesn't make noise. It's more deep inside of the Russian Chassidim at that time, more deep inside of them, their connection, their commitment, their Mesirus Nefesh. Of course, because of what they had to go through, 70 years communism, and before that the Tsar of Russia. So it's much more, the Mesirus Nefesh, self-sacrifice, is a part of them. And this then becomes the Rebbe's mandate to continue, the previous Rebbe, to continue to care for, the previous Rebbe was for Russian Jewry, and through Russian Jewry, all of world Jewry, but not so clearly stated, more, Russian Jewry, where the Rebbe then took over the mantle of leadership. He continues that the caring for world Jewry is paramount. And this is based, we see in his very first Hasidic discourse in 1951 that he said, Vasi Legani Maimer. Hasidic discourse is something that a Rebbe says, and it is then, in the Farbregen in 1951, was a sign of the Rebbe accepting the mantle of leadership and to continue from the previous Rebbe as the seventh generation. And in the Rebbe's Hasidic discourse of Basi Lagani, which by the way we learn every morning at 7:05 on Zoom and on Facebook, Chabad ZK. And he speaks about what is the ultimate goal, is for the final redemption of Mashiach, and that's the seventh generation is unique in that, just as Moses was the seventh generation after Abraham, Moshe Rabbeinu, seventh generation, he brought the presence of God through the giving of the Ten Commandments, or giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, and more specifically by creating a home for God in the Mishkan and the tabernacle in the desert. So likewise, we're the seventh generation, or the Rebbe is the seventh generation that we're a part of, that we're going to bring the final redemption, bring the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God, into this world, once and for all, for eternity. Now, how are we going to do it? So very interesting in that discourse. The Rebbe speaks about Avas Yisrael, the love of another Jew who is a part of you, And this is through the Avas Yisrael that we have for a fellow Jew. Loving a Jew as you love yourself. As you love yourself as a Jew, then you're going to love another Jew for the mere fact of their Jewishness. And through that then becomes a responsibility that we have, not just to Jews, but to all of humanity. As the Rebbe exemplified that very clearly in his leadership. And in that mimer, in that Hasidic discourse, interesting that he actually tells stories of all of the Rebbes. He tells the story in a very short form, but still tells a story about their Ahavas Yisrael, on how they would sacrifice for another, to be there for another. So he tells us the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Hasidic movement, the author of the Tanya, what we learn every morning, 9:30, every morning on these three networks that we're on right now. We're on Facebook, Chabad.org. We're on Instagram, the Tanya Rabbi, and we're on Clubhouse. Every morning, 9:30, come and join us. So I think most of you that are here do that already. In any case, so he tells the story of the Alter Rebbe that was on Yom Kippur. He was praying. In the middle of prayers, he takes off his tallis and goes off into the edge of town, where a woman was left alone, and she was in the midst of giving birth, or just gave birth, I think. I know maybe she wasn't alone. Maybe I don't recall that point. But in any case, she needed help giving birth. So he went chopped some wood, made a fire, or continued the fire, or whatever, and made some food for her. Imagine the Alter Rebbe, his prayers on Yom Kippur. There's nothing like that. His prayers. It's Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, Day of Atonement. And what does he do? Leaves it all aside for one woman that is in need. One woman that's in need. Then he tells the story of the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe, the son of the Alter Rebbe. And someone came to Yechidus to him and bemoaning the situation, and he shows him his arm and how shriveled it is. And it is because of the effect of all of the people that he's connected with. They affect him so deeply because of the deep connection that my skin shrivels. You know, when you hear something, the saying is, your hair stands on end. Well, here, much more so. Mittler Rebbe, his skin is shriveled up because of the love and the devotion, the connection that he has to us. Then he tells the story of the Tzemach Tzedek, that before he would pray every morning, he would seek out a pauper to give him money, or lend him money, help him, whatever it is, before he would proceed to prayers. The Rebbe Marash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Reb Shmuel, he told the story about when he left Russia and went to Paris, and went to a very fancy hotel, and in order to connect with one Jew that had gone off the path, and to inspire him to return back to Judaism. Back in the day, to go from Russia to Paris, the difficulty in such a journey, but for the sake of one person, to help them to come back, to return to Judaism, of course. And then the Rebbe Rashab, the previous Rebbe's father, Shalom Doiber, in the decree that was in Moscow, and him going there, his brother says to him, Zalman Aron, you don't know the language so well. Maybe you shouldn't go and deal with this. Maybe I should go with other Chassidim who know Russian language properly, so we could present our side and annul the decree. This is a different decree than the previous Rebbe. There are several decrees that occurred during the Tsar of Russia and then in the communist era. And he says, no, I'm going to go myself. And he was successful in annulling the decree, putting himself aside. All there is for the good of the community. And then, as he concluded, the previous Rebbe, there's so many stories to tell about him, so many that are known, and so on. So here is in the Hasidic discourse, that usually is a very lofty exposition of a godly concept. And he speaks about caring for another, putting yourself aside for another, Ahavas Yisrael, because this will be the key in the Rebbe's leadership and the over 5,000 outposts of shluchim the Rebbe's emissaries, the men and the women that are on the front lines, that put aside everything for another, to care for them, to be there for them, that another's welfare, whether it's materially, whether it's spiritually, whatever it is, to be there for them. That a 19-year-old boy will go out to a community instead of being in a yeshiva studying and building up his own life, building up his own spiritual life, putting that aside because this is what's needed. So is a Rebbe there to guide us in what is needed for the generation, what is the task of the generation. And the previous Rebbe and our Rebbe, Mesiras Nefesh, by the previous Rebbe, the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice, was ready to even sacrifice your life. Our generation, are you ready to put aside your personal spiritual growth? Forget about put aside your comfort. That for sure, to put aside your comfort. But to put aside your spiritual growth, that's questionable. And many people question the previous Rebbe and what he did, and our Rebbe what he did in America. Just, put yourself into a Jewish ghetto that we can make sure that we stay alive in Jewish living, because the assimilation and in America, in Western culture, is so powerful, such a powerful force that we need to make barriers, walls to protect us. Previous Rebbe and our Rebbe even more so said, no, we have a responsibility to every fellow Jew. For that matter, we have a responsibility to all of humanity, that we need to be there for them. For every Jew, to bring them closer to 613 mitzvahs, non-Jews 7 Noachide laws, and we have to do that with a full devotion, to make it not we're just doing something, a favor to God, a favor to the Rebbe. Favor is being done for us. So here's the bottom line, folks. L'chaim, is you're not doing anybody by doing a favor for anybody. But the Rebbe wants us to recognize the favor is for us. That we, not only that we grow and become closer to God, and do another mitzvah, more and more mitzvahs, but that we share it with another. That's our favor. That's the blessing that we have. It's not a blessing that, I'm bestowing upon another. No. We're giving when we share what we have in Jewish teachings, in Jewish life. Yes, we're bestowing. But recognize at the same time, when we're bestowing, the favor is for us. We're gaining even more. We don't do it for the gain. We do it for the cause. That cause being to help another fellow Jew, to help another human being, that they can recognize the image of God that they've been created in and live more godly life. And we are helping one closer step to the final purpose of what the Rebbe wants and that we want to accomplish. Mashiach now. The final redemption. The Mashiach is not just around the corner. It's on the threshold. The reality is in our hands to create. It's been created. We just now need to recognize that, live it, and then it will be. No question. Geula Shlema. The final redemption. The Rebbe will lead us out of this exile. The Dora Shviya, the seventh generation. This is what we're all about. L'chaim, l'chaim. Thank you for joining. If anybody has any questions or comments, I have just a few moments. All right. Beautiful. Thank you all for joining. Pass on the message. Today is the day that you to write in upon a pidyon nefesh, redemption of soul, to the oihel of the Rebbe, the resting place of the Rebbe, to connect first and foremost, and of course to ask for blessings. Give in your name, your Jewish name, your mother's Jewish name. If you're not Jewish, give your name and your father's name, and ask for blessings. Ask for the connection, to deepen the connection. Beautiful. All right, folks. Thank you for joining. Have an amazing rest of Yud Shevat.